What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Streaker Steve here, and we are back with episode 151 of the video game therapy series. Yeah, I'm on a bit of a hot streak. I don't mean streaker as somebody running around naked. I just mean I'm on a bit of a hot streak with these videos. Hopefully, I can keep that going. I don't know if the hot streak is quality. The hot streak is just completion, which I guess I talked about before. But everything being about completion and not about quality. But this is something where the intention is not quality is very little of a influential factor in terms of the end result of this. Because ultimately, I'm not really affecting that many lives, and it's more for me than it is for anyone else. So the range of impact of these is quite low. But anyway, move on to some of the topics I have here. This is just more of a, like I said, I think we have society's a little bit too, maybe I'm not going to say society, maybe younger people, like people in my age group, are not, they almost view life as like a curse or just like as some, unless they're like lucky in some way or have a bunch of advantages that give them. And I guess, some of it's just like gratitude for the advantages that you do have. It's, realizing that. But many that don't have the advantage kind of view life as this prison or this, just they don't really have a, I don't know, a sense of an appreciation for it. In a sense, they're very much maybe protective of, people's lives in the abstract, but they don't treat themselves with the same respect they might give other people, right? They don't value life highly. And this is not a generalization about a particular political or demographic group. It's simply, I think, an overarching sentiment is that, again, people are very in favor of life and in favor of humans, I would say, even, but then almost very self-denying in the sense that they don't do much to arbor their own self-propagation or even just self-improvement. And I guess, to use that word, even though I don't really like that word that much. Regardless, I think one way that, not that I expect people to adopt this and, this to solve the problem of that, but I just think in general we should view life as more of a, I'll say specifically an earned privilege. Like, it's one thing to say that it's like a privilege to be alive because it doesn't really feel like that sometimes. But I think you even need to earn that privilege to feel anything. Because I guess the quote that might drive this point home is really that worse than feeling your worst imaginable pain, like the worst, like even worse than feeling that. Like, imagine the worst pain you could possibly feel, or whether that's a psychological pain or a physical pain or whatever. I would argue, and again, you could disagree with this, however, but I feel like intuitively should be, you would understand this at least. But that worst pain that you can feel is still preferable to never feeling anything ever in the first place. And I guess it's hard to say, like, having felt something, like, I don't know what feeling nothing feels like, because I've always felt things. Like, I've always felt, I have, and even like, I'm not even saying like I mean, I'm even including like the perception of touch, period. I'm not talking about like emotions or anything particular, any particular biological or physiological or psychological quirk. I mean, just like in general, the perception, like a feeling as a real thing, is still, any of that, even of the bad kind, the pain, I think is still preferable to maybe having never lived or existed in the first place. And some people don't get that. I mean, as sad as it might be, is to say, I think some people might wish or at least think about like them not ever existing. And I've said that before, where it's like it's never it's not like a suicidal urge where it's like I want to end my life. Where it's like, well, I wonder if I had never just existed in the first place. Like, would that? And again, I would never. You couldn't even know what that's like because, again, you by definition you wouldn't exist. And I think it's a thought that when entering your mind is quickly like, well, no, I would rather, even if my life does suck, it's still like mine and it's still a life, right? And I think that's another way to look at it. It's like, yeah, you're given the life you have, and maybe it does suck, but it's still yours, and it's all you have. Like, what else do you have really, other than other than your life, right? So it's like you can wallow in it, and you can kind of, but that's only gonna make the shitty life that you have even worse, right? Like, I mean, I guess give points to drug users at least. It's like, all right, well, my life sucks. Drugs are fun, I'll do that. And it's not that I ever want to sympathize with drug users, on the sense that, like, I think that's an important thing to be. I don't think drugs are a part of a good life. And even the classification of a drug is hard to, like, alcohol is technically not a drug, but people kind of rope it into that. But then, like, all right, is Tylenol, is that a drug too, or coffee, is it caffeine, is that, all these are technically like drugs, but even some of them are naturally occurring in the body, like hormones and things, like melatonin as a drug. I don't count that as being drugs. So I'm not, in general, I think the less crap, not crap, the less of anything that you put into your body, and unless you're malnourished, probably the better. Especially like an overabundance of food, but even just like relying on melatonin to fall asleep or relying on supplements of some kind. And it's harder now, I think. I say that as someone that supplements a lot. I have fish oil, different vitamins and things. Only because I think we've GMO'd the shit out of our foods. Our food kind of sucks. Sucks nutritionally. Not even. I mean, it sucks in the sense that a lot of it's not that good for you. Some of it tastes good, I'm sure, but I now have a refined palate I have the palate of a caveman now. So I even things like I even had like anything that's like regularly sweet to me now, just because I haven't had sugars in so long, is like an abomination. It's almost sour how sweet it is, right? It's like it's I don't know. It's weird having undergone such a dietary change, how that affects like your taste buds. Things literally taste different, and like the satisfaction of food is a different. It's not the same as it was. It used to be almost this like indulgent, like, oh my god, I'm about to just crush this food. I'm so excited. Whereas now it just seems it's not even like a chore. It's just like, okay, well, I'm gonna eat some food, and it's not like I'm like looking forward to it or looking against it. I guess I just don't really even think about it as a, it feels very, not automatic, but certainly like a more on autopilot type thing, where it's not like I'm excited or looking forward to. I'm just kind of neutral. I don't really even think about, let's go, I'm about to eat some food. And like, is it good? Like, yeah, it tastes, it tastes fine. Like, I don't even really think about, in depth how it tastes, which I think is a good thing. I think, like I said before, collectively, our relationship with food is pathological, right? People view it as, I'm not going to go so far as to say it's a religion, but people treat it as if it's, like a, I mean, I don't know. I think in that sense, we could almost treat food as drugs in some way. It's like we can almost say it's like, all right, well, a certain amount, melatonin's fine. You can have it a couple times if, you want to fall asleep early one night. But like, in general, you don't, moderation is the key to your melatonin usage. Same with all food in general. Like food is, almost, it's the drug that keeps you alive in some sense. And calories or, protein and fats and amino acids. These are, the basic building blocks of things. But yeah, you almost view that as a drug too. And just, all right, you want to moderate it, right? You don't want to, I'm not saying no drugs ever or every drug is bad or everything's. I mean, I just think in general, moderation's a fine worldview with things. Against that though, I also do think there are many things that require the moderation. The moderate amount, in my opinion, is zero, right? So even like, what's the moderate amount of heroin to do? Nothing, right? It's like some of this is again intuitive. I shouldn't need to tell you that the hard drugs are bad, but even things like that many people think are benign. I even would put some social media into this category. Like LinkedIn for me is a moderation zero. If I ever have to go on that website for any reason, I don't know why I don't just like nuke my account. I guess for some weird reason I have FOMO. I really should nuke my account. I don't know why I still have that account. But like going on there, the tolerance for that should be zero. I shouldn't have any tolerance for going on LinkedIn. But just in general, having a moderation as a worldview, I think is good. Let me move on to something else here. People that write books, I've mentioned briefly about, I think, I guess how bad modern writers are. People just can't write for shit. I mean, I don't know. It's not that they're illiterate. I mean, I know people are more illiterate now than ever, but even the people that are literate and I would even say that articulate, but they're just not thoughtful, right? Like what they're writing the book about. Like, did they think about what they're doing? Or like, is the point just to fill the pages with something that you can put your eyes on? Or are you trying to actually distill wisdom into something I can read, or just distill even a fucking story or something? I mean, my litmus test for writers, and it's more the realm of nonfiction. I guess fiction, I don't really read fiction, so I can't have I guess I don't have a say, or I don't care. But if you're writing nonfiction, you need to write about something that you either have extremely strong and or controversial opinions about, again, for quote unquote good reason, whatever you think that is. But then also something that you might have changed your mind about, or at least thought about both sides of like, I think if you have, let's say a very, very strong opinion on something, but you've never wavered from that opinion, you never changed your mind, that might sound like a good thing. It's like, oh, he's convicted. he or she is convicted. But I also I think there is I don't think that allows you to fully distill an idea completely. I think the people who write the best about any subject have, they have a relationship with a subject that it isn't passionate. It's more of like it's curiosity, or they've entertained both sides of this. And sure, maybe they've come out with a strong opinion on one side or with no side really. You don't even really have to have a strong opinion per se. You just need to have explored these strong opinions on both sides and have at one point at least seriously considered them. But I think most people that write books about things that they have opinions on have never even remotely considered the other things, or just don't. It's incomprehensible to them a different perspective, right? And I think if a different perspective on a topic to you is incomprehensible, I don't know that you should be writing a book on that, much less a book that's 800 words long, like or 800 pages long. You're just wasting everyone's time, because I don't think you're not the person qualified to do this, right? Leave the book about this topic to someone who's changed their mind, or has had strong opinions, or just has you know true wisdom, or at least something interesting they've gleaned as a result. But the problem with any of this is just, me laying out rules for who should write what. Again, not that I'm expecting anyone to enforce this, or I'm partially facetious in this. You can write whatever you want, of course, but I think if you're someone that self publishes, or you're quote unquote, you call yourself an author, uh, it's almost like calling yourself like like an artist or something, or calling yourself like a savant. Like, you don't call yourself like other people, or calling yourself like a genius. Calling yourself a genius is the easiest way to let everyone know that you're retarded. Like, there's no faster way I can make someone go, "Oh, that guy's an idiot," than by saying, "Well, I'm actually a clinical genius." It's like, I don't. Even if you are, let's say, like some doctor when you were 11 told you you had it, then you're still a retard, because anyone who would have thought about that knows, like, understands that, like, A, they don't care, like, about your IQ, or B, that doesn't mean anything. That's just it's a score on a test, and it's not really that accurate to the true. Like, sure, you might have impressive processing power of your brain, like you're fast and you can answer questions quickly, but there are many other facets. I'd say even most of the useful facets of intelligence don't necessarily involve the speed of thinking, or the ability to do, I'll say, like, mathematics, right? Uh, there's almost this level of abstract, and it is measured by IQ tests. I'm not saying that the abstract reasoning, like this universal G factor of intelligence, isn't included to some varying degree in the intelligence test. It is. I'm not saying that the intelligence itself, says nothing. It does say something, but parading around it as like the measure of how smart you are is moronic. It's simply a proxy, and a very bad proxy at that. So it's just not. I don't know. It's stupid. But telling writers, in the same way you'd be telling some quote unquote genius that no one cares about their IQ, telling someone who calls himself a writer that they shouldn't have written a book on this because their opinions aren't thoughtful enough. That's never going to get through their head, right? I think the type of person that would mistakenly write a book that they have no business writing would never have the self awareness to realize that they're not qualified to write about this, or at least maybe they themselves could be qualified, but they haven't done the exploration and the work necessary to justify writing a fucking book. And I think I said before, I think books, like, if you want to write a book, which I'm not saying that I would never do or that no one should do. Obviously, I think I'm in favor of people writing. I think it's good, but you should, if you're writing a book and you're going to get it published, you should be thinking that this should last 1,000 years. I mean, the time horizon on these ideas that you're putting in there should be, like, limitless. And if it's a fiction book, again, the point isn't, like, I guess you could tell a story that's about you or something like that, but the point would be to, again, share insights about, I don't know, the humanity, or insights about, again, I talked about the art last time, where it's like something small inside you that is representative, and people also see that small part in them, and there's a relatability aspect to it, but it requires, like, deep selfishness and deep self-awareness of yourself. But by definition, anyone that is conceited enough to write a book that they shouldn't write isn't going to be able to, isn't going to know that. Right? It's almost too stupid to know. I guess pivoting away from that, I guess more on the topic of stupid people in general. Um, I I hear news mostly through my friends, so my friends will call me and talk to me for a while, and I prefer receiving the news that way versus doom scrolling myself, only because for many reasons, but partially because I feel like I can ask my friends anything. Like, if I have genuine questions about what they're telling me, I can be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? And they either are able to respond and understand the topic well enough, or to be like, well, dude, I actually don't know that. That's a good question. Or maybe they could go back and forth with me or something like that. But anyway, as I hear about these things that happen, and naturally when anything happens on the news, there's whatever the news story is, and then there's whatever the conspiracy is above that. And like I said before, I think there is merit to a lot of these conspiracies. Like, they're not founded on nothing. Most of the time, there is at least a nucleus of something inconsistent that results in the full blown conspiracy at some point later. So it's not like these conspiracies are just people making stuff up and they're all wacko. It's like many of them have, again, there's a at least something there that has that's at least interesting, right? It's not like it's necessarily the conspiracy, but it's at least something that's unexpected. But I guess the harder part for me to think about is like when it comes to like government conspiracies. So like the specific example I have in mind, talking about this is like the FBI is out doing something stupid, and they're not like they're doing a horrible job investigating something, and who knows. But then the question that I almost ask is like, okay, either like the two options I see, and this is only one of these really I see as could be true. So these are the two options that I see it. Either the FBI is full of incompetent retards that have no clue what they're doing and can't investigation, or there's some larger conspiracy afoot. So really, then the question is like, are they stupid or is it actually a conspiracy? And I don't know. So, like, in order for me to believe that the people in the government are conscious, are competent and good at what they do, or at the very least, like, not completely moronic. If I had to believe that, then I need to believe in the conspiracy. I need to believe that this whatever they're showing, whatever they're saying they're doing, is either not what they're doing, or there's a larger conspiracy afoot. But in the case that there is no conspiracy, and this is genuinely what the FBI is doing, then there's no other real conclusion that they're a bunch of incompetent retards running around with no clue what they're doing, right? And this is not necessarily about the FBI. I don't care. If you're watching this, go fuck yourself. And maybe I do think they are retarded and not, they're not, they're not part of some conspiracy. But I guess we'll find out. If I get whacked, then there is a conspiracy, and I was on the wrong end of it. But if I don't get whacked, then I stand by the statement that they're retarded. But it's either way. It's weird that like that ends up being the conclusion we have to draw. Is that all right? These people are either really stupid, or there is a genuine conspiracy that seems to be the most plausible thing. Because I even think like, I don't know, with conspiracies in general, people are always like, well, I would never believe these crazy conspiracy theorists. It's like, well, okay, well, a lot of times when these conspiracies come out, it's a new event, right? Something new just happened. It's not like this is, they're investigating, the JFK assassination that, it happened 80 years ago or whatever. Like, something just happened, right? The facts are still kind of out there. We don't really know. And yeah, sure, like the mainstream media might give us, the narrative, the story that we have. And again, we have to kind of assume that many of the main parts of the story aren't completely fabricated, right? Like, the names of the suspects are probably like accurate, right? They're not like lying about that stuff. Like, that's not the conspiracy. It's not like a fake, body double that they kill or something like that. There might be instances of that, but that's not what I think about when I hear that. But in general, then it's like, okay, there's new information coming out from the news media, and then again, the conspiracy theorists that are apparently these crazy morons, have the same set of facts, but a lot of times they're augmented in different ways. They're like, well, actually, the news said this, but the real truth is this. Which again, it's like, okay, then it's again one word versus the other, and again, the amount of times that a news publication has been just blatantly wrong, or it's just one journalist versus the other. One journalist has a job at a respectable institution. The other one is called a conspiracy theorist, but is still technically a journalist. That's like, that's what they are. I mean, Alex Jones himself, that's a journalist. However, he's also dabbles in a lot of conspiracies. Okay, fine. That's like, it's just one journalist versus the other. And, the conspiracy is really just believing one, over a different one. Which, again, depending on who the journalists are, what they're saying, or even the group of the collective journalists with this, conspiracy information, what's more convincing? That's really all it is. And a lot of times, I'm not even giving conspiracies a lot of vote, but conspiracies are right more often than people tend to believe. And maybe that is also dependent on what is considered a conspiracy. Because a lot of times when the truth, or whatever the closest approximation to the truth that we have, given we can't, time only moves one direction, at least we're, whatever. It's a different metaphysical thing about moving different directions. But by the time we're actually able to disprove whatever, then we're on to the next thing, and it's not a conspiracy anymore. It's like, well, it was, and at some point you'd have been considered a retard for running around, spouting off about this conspiracy. But that's genuinely the closest factual account that we have right now. But yet, like, this was the conspiracy at one point. So I just think calling things conspiracies is a blanketly derogatory or just defamatory thing. I guess derogatory is more towards a person. It's a defamatory thing towards defamatory ideas, I guess. So I don't know. I never I don't like to call anything a conspiracy until the dust has settled, which is hard to say about what when the dust settles on certain events. But in general, I don't like to rule any ideas out. So I guess with that in mind, I don't know. I guess the FBI could be purposely doing some kind of op, but I mean they're doing all kinds of them. I just don't know which ones, what is part of the op and what isn't, right? It's like, is there a conspiracy above the conspiracy? There's all these meta, the difficulty with conspiracy is you don't know when it ends, right? There's a beginning to the conspiracy generally, right? But is there ever an end? Because on top of the existing conspiracy, there could be another one, right? The conspiracy itself could be the conspiracy they want you to believe. You just don't know. Either way, a healthy way is just to not really engage yourself with as much as possible, and I feel like that actually gets you close enough, because by the time you actually hear about whatever it is, most of the dust has been settled. People have, decided who is the conspiracy theorist and who isn't, and then I listen to everybody, right? The conspiracy theorists included. I give them a seat at the table, no different. At least the seat at the table of who I'm choosing to believe, which is that's what my table is in this example. But yeah. Anyway, move on to something else here. This is just the larger. I was trying to think about what are the primary problems of society, and I didn't want to be like, well, healthcare, the economy. I didn't want to go through the boring, the boring laundry list there. I was meaning more like the say meta characteristic, problems, or just kind of problems that encompass all problems, kind of almost not perennial issues, because that could be scientific things like rectifying the quantum mechanics versus Newtonian thing, some kind of unifying third grand theory. That is technically I guess the difficulties of our current society or species. I guess more with regard to our species than society itself, but society is I guess encompasses all our species, so they could be one and the same. Regardless, I think the two main, or maybe there's more than this. Maybe that's why I'm putting this out there. But two of the primary ones that I could think of are one, the evaluation or quantification of a human's well-being, because we see these world happiness or world well-being or wealth metrics. Everyone's got their own idea of oh, well, the Ethiopians live on $2 a day. It's well, that doesn't mean anything to me. How much is an egg? If an egg is 5 cents, $2 isn't that really that bad, or something. I don't even know. Again, you could do the math on this, but only living on $1 a day, it's all right. Well, if you're in New York City, $1 a day, you're just going to die, because you can't. That's not even enough for a bag of nuts, right? So it's all right. You're going to die there. But in Ethiopia, you might be fine. If you can actually live on $1 a day, then that money maybe has some legs to it, right? At least more so than it does in the U.S. But I still don't think those are even a decent metric. I mean, maybe it's better than nothing, but it certainly isn't a very accurate appraisal of how well an individual or even a collective group of individuals are doing. And this is a very, very difficult thing to quantify in the first place. Human well-being, we don't really know, again, besides measuring brain activity or neurotransmitter levels, or just asking them, which again, you're subject to lies and the whole sociology problem. There's not really a great way to determine objectively. Objectively is kind of impossible in this context, but objectively determine if conditions are genuinely improving in one way or the other. And so we also have no way of going back in time to say that, well, at this time we're moving in the wrong direction, so to speak. So I guess to be go to the extreme with this, the quality of life for our prehistoric hunter-gatherer ancestors, as the measuring point. How do we know that collectively we are at the end of even at the end of our lives, or just our day-to-day, that we are happier or better or in some way improved? Like, are we really certain that we are? Like, I understand, yes, we have plumbing, we have heating. Like, these are things that, would drive us, would drive us crazy now. But again, our prehistoric ancestors, they had no conception of this whatsoever. It's like, imagine a future where there's time travel and there's teleportation and there's, you don't have to eat anything. Everyone's ripped and got a six pack. And then you're telling people about this, and then they're like, what do they do? Oh, they just like, they have a phone. It's like a little box that they look at. It's not, the chip isn't just in their head, right? It's like, that's weird. How could they ever be happy like that? But again, we don't know. We don't have any conception of what, again, besides a fiction cyberpunk dystopia or something, we have no conception of what the future might hold. So we don't know. Comparing ourselves to a future with new technologies, again, is almost likely, I'd say, to make us more miserable than we are now. But, and I think there's, my argument would be that, again, there's a like hedonic set point with things, and even beyond like the pleasure aspect of it, the hedonism. I'm thinking more of the like spiritual satisfaction of your life. Like, is your life a complete? Did you live a complete life? Do you feel satisfied in whatever way, with your life? And that this could be anything. There's no baseline requirements. It's not like you have to, in order to be satisfied with your life, you have to have $50,000. People have been satisfied with their lives being, again, poverty struck and broke, never had anything. I mean, Diogenes famously, again, owned and did nothing, and again, from the outside observer, seemed pretty content and otherwise happy his entire life. But again, in our modern standards, you'd be like, what a tragedy. I feel so. But he's like, no, fuck you guys. Actually, I'm the happy one. You guys are all retards. I think, but that would never come up in that happiness or joy index. So I think the issue of trying to quantify, or at least some way evaluate, I'm not even going to say quantify, just evaluate the collective well-being, or comparing the well-being of individual to individual, across a time horizon, is one of our existing challenges. The second of these two challenges, and I'm still kind of toying with, is the distribution of resources, or like adequate, or like how to distribute resources. And you can argue that that's even what a society is. Like, society simply is an organization that distributes resources in some way. And sometimes it's efficient, sometimes it's not efficient. Sometimes it involves, just a simple peer-to-peer small network. Like, even you could even say that the hunter-gatherer societies were still societies because they still had resource distribution, right? People would hunt, they would distribute the meat and whatever with other people, and they kind of moved as a pack. And there was kind of these agreements, between them. It wasn't like people were ever living on their own and just like one person is dicking around the woods, unless they lost their tribe or something. But, by and large, we were still together in some kind of social setting. Like, we still had a quote unquote society, pre-agriculture and everything. But it's just not really the society that we think of now. But even that, it's like, okay, then going to the modern society now, how do we effectively distribute resources? And this is just the age old, like, well, we should let the free market decide, the invisible hand of the free market, that is jacking off Jeff Bezos or whatever that, whatever the invisible hand is doing, who knows. But that doesn't seem like it aligns very well to the incentives of, again, like the benefit of humans' well-being. Because the capitalists, the people that would, I'm not going to say people who would defend capitalism as the only, or the proper, or the, I'll say, like, final, or the destination distribution strategy of a society, I think would say, well, we've only gotten better. Like, look at history. History will prove me right. We've only gotten better. And I would say, well, no, I actually disagree with you. I think hunter-gatherers were happy, more dissatisfied throughout their entire lives and at the end of their lives than we were. I think generally modern people, even with all the new, are still more miserable than people running around with sticks poking bears. And I know that's like, that seems like a heretical idea, and that goes against the whole idea of this technological progress. And I'm not even saying that I want to go back, or it's like, well, fine, go in the woods then, loser. I'm not saying I want to exit society and lose. I'm just saying, and again, it isn't about me. I'm just saying collectively, I think, I genuinely think our species was more satisfied, and happier is kind of a harder word to use, more satisfied before like our organized large scale society existed in the first place, like, period. So by that logic, I don't think, the defenders of capitalism really have much to stand on. That being said, the socialists and the commies and whoever, the dictators, have even less to stand on, right? They, in terms of the genocides, wars, deaths, all the quote unquote plagues of society, problems. They have a worse track record than the capital. At least, the capitalists at least have some points, right? Scientific discoveries. There's some points there for the I'll give them points there. But, the communists and the socialists, I don't know that they have many points anywhere ever. I don't know if they've done. Has that been done well at all? Like, no, I don't think so. And again, it's like I think the quote was like, capitalism is the worst form of governance ever invented, except for everything else, or whatever it is. So, really what I'm trying to get at with this entire thing is I just think we need to keep thinking of paradigms to effectively distribute resources. Like, I don't know that, there's other ones out there like the Georgism, the whole like where land value tax. Like, there's other frameworks and setups that we can do with society. It's not just the same two. It's not communism or capitalism. Like, I realize that these are two. People view that as this like absolute spectrum where there's just like you're either a super capitalist or you're a super communist, and there's nowhere. It's like there's other ways we can set this up. Like, again, Georgism I think is a great example. And again, it hasn't been implemented. I don't know. There could be a lot of problems, but it's at least like thinking about, like, obviously what we're doing doesn't really work that well. Over. I mean, again, you could make arguments there, but it's not going to continue to work well for the rest of time, right? Do I think capitalism is the final way that we're going to organize society forever? No, because if that's the case, then it'll probably be a nuclear Armageddon that will end everything, and it will be the last one because we'll be extinct. But I think if humanity is to continue, and I'm in favor of that, I think we still need to evolve and kind of generate new. Even we need some new, just ideas, even to kind of workshop about how to set up and distribute resources effectively, and more importantly, with how to set things up is managing like these incentives, because that's what all these systems are based off of. Is like, even like democracy as a way of doing is based off of the incentive. Like, the voters have an incentive to protect like their own interests. The politicians have, again, presumably the incentive to do things to get voted again. And right, there's this kind of like connection between the amount of votes that you're going to get and how well you stick to your promises, or whatever the fuck. I don't care. I don't know about that's obviously not my realm. But regardless, I still think you need to think about incentives when we're designing these new systems or this new system of governance or something. But I just think we've kind of stopped thinking, right? I feel like I don't ever hear about, and I'm sure there are people somewhere on the internet that are loud about Georgism or just different philosophies. But I wish there was still more conversation being had on different economic systems that are possible. It's not just the same two. But I think we're just too, I don't know, we're too familiar and comfortable with the capitalism, socialism, and we just like kind of arguing amongst ourselves about that for eternity, which is less constructive, I think, than even just, again, workshopping new ideas or just workshopping different ones or just anything. Either way, I don't know. I just think it's there's more meat left on that bone, so we should chew it. Let me move on to something else here. I got to scroll on this. Yeah. This is an interesting like AI theory is that we'll have like this is again not related to the last topics at all. An interesting theory around like I guess where AI develops is AI specifically with these giant oligarchic corporations. Like what do AIs even look like? And it's only a matter of time before like they begin to. And again, I hope at some point the ship turns around where it's like we move in a different direction at least, because right now it feels like technologically and socially we're moving in one bad direction that nobody's that excited about. At least I'm not around the people that are excited. If there are them, I don't know where they are. Regardless, I think, but we need some kind of change of direction. But if there is no change in direction, I think the companies will essentially create an AI and then infuse it with like whatever their version of the corpo brain rot personality is, like essentially their LinkedIn persona. And then these will be what we're going to be subjected to sifting through is all this AI persona. Like it'll be like AI Wendy's. Like Wendy's will have, instead of, Wendy will be a real person, and they'll actually like they'll take your order. It's going to have a robot that's dressed up like a redhead and pigtails, taking your order. As a whatever, inside the store. I think that is kind of the direction that we'll use AIs. They'll kind of adopt these personalities, and then maybe they'll have Twitters and stuff too, and they'll almost just be humans, except there'll be these AIs, controlled by a giant, by Wendy's or McDonald's or something like that. And the Coca-Cola bear will fight. It'll all be, people will find their own little creative twist, and it might even be interesting, like creatively, to see, what companies decide to use as their like mascot or AI. Because they don't have to be human, right? You can make the Coca-Cola bear. There's no reason you couldn't, stuff a giant animatronic with a computer and have it talk and speak English. Like, who cares? Or Minnie Mouse being, AIs. People are already doing this. I'm certain of it. So I'm not really even new coming onto that, but I don't know. I see a Wendy's AI in our future. That's all I'm going to say. I genuinely think we're going to sadly be talking to fake AIs that are supposedly representing whatever company, like customer service, for example, too. Like we'll have an AT&T, it'll be that girl with the giant tits or whatever. We'll be talking to her, trying to get your modem fixed instead of some, Indian guy. Anyway, this is again a total, not 180, but just not related. And this is just with like feeling bad for yourself. And I, as any human, does, there are times and days and situations and even, longer periods, months sometimes where, you just don't, you feel bad. You don't feel good. It's just not, things aren't going your way. You're just not feeling good. And I think it's fine to feel bad, but I am very wary of feeling bad for yourself, right? Like I think pity is not ever a good mindset or mentality to have. So if you are feeling bad, fine, you can feel bad, and you can even acknowledge, I don't feel good, I feel bad. Not like sick, I just mean like psychologically I don't feel well, I'm unhappy for whatever reason, or I'm irritable, I don't know. Like you can't always tell, you don't know. But in general, if you do feel bad, I would be wary to feel bad of yourself, like for yourself. Like don't give yourself pity. Because what I've noticed, and this is, again, just my opinion and my advice, really, what I've noticed is when you begin to give yourself pity, you then give yourself breaks on things. And giving yourself breaks sometimes can be fine. Sometimes you are too hard on yourself. But in general, I think we're very aware of our limits. And I think it's important that we keep pushing ourselves to be better. And we don't just let society and other people push on us. Sometimes there's other people or it's family or someone that does push very hard on you. And, in that case, again, not pity, but just at least understanding with yourself is a perfectly fine, direction and thing to do. But I worry about just, when you begin to wallow in pity, you don't really do anything. And then it kind of can become this self-destructive loop where, the pity becomes constant, and then you kind of look at yourself in a different light, and then you're digging yourself a bigger hole, like the more you feel bad for yourself. So I'm not ever against feeling bad. I felt bad. Like I know what feeling bad is. I understand that is a real thing, but I'm very wary. I don't ever want to feel bad for myself. And I don't want that bad feeling to convert to pity, because I think pity is a very destructive mentality. I don't think it bodes well. I guess with on this topic, I suppose, pity doesn't really lend itself to completing things or getting better at things, or like moving in a positive direction. And people like things that do. People like people that are good at things, right? So especially if you're lost, or if you're, again, feeling bad or whatever it is. Like I think, if nothing else, try to get good at something. Throw yourself at it. Could be the stupidest skill ever. People still like people that are good at things. Like, why do you think like athletes are famous for good reason? It's not even that they're, sometimes they're not even that good at what they're famous for. They might be shitty or something, but we really like and defend, whether it's verbal or obvious or not. We like people that are good at stuff like that. So being good at stuff gives you a lot of, I'm not gonna say power, because I don't really like thinking of it in that way, but it gives you a lot of leverage, and it gives you more confidence if you know that you are good at something, and that something is a valuable anything. Then you ultimately, again, you avoid that like spiral of pity. And I know it's hard to remove yourself from a problem while you're in it and it's kind of ravaging you. It's like, It's like, oh, get over cancer, stop having it. It's like I would love to stop having it, but it's still kind of, still kind of destroying me. Uh, but I think as you're able to, to the extent that you're able to avoid feeling bad for yourself, I think you should. Um, and that goes for any case. I don't even if like the extreme case where it's like, okay, your parents got run over by, a 18 wheeler or something like that, something horrible, and you lose people that you care about in your life. And again, I'm hesitant to, uh, you know, to go any other direction, but still say not like don't feel bad for yourself. I think even in that case, it's not going to help you. And the other thing with that, and this is just more of a, just again, it's a mentality thing. Like, suppose you were 10 years old and your parents both got run over by an 18 wheeler and they died, and now you're an orphan and whatever. If you did nothing, if you accomplished nothing for the rest of your life, or were like, even if you did, like at that point, not being a murderer is kind of a win, right? Like if you end up not, running a cult or doing something horrible or becoming the next Hitler, like I think in that scenario, that scenario, like it's a win, kind of, for society in the sense that we kind of avoided what could be, what was a real problem, gestating, potential problem that is. But if you are that person, like you have the perfect excuse to never really do anything or accomplish anything for the rest of your life. So your parents died, you got run by a car crash, it was traumatizing, et cetera, et cetera. Like you have the perfect excuse to never accomplish anything with your life. But why would you want that, right? Like I feel like if that did happen to you, not that it should be motivating, but at the very least, do you really want that to be what defines your entire life? Are you going to let that define? Are you going to let that be everything that you have? Even if you have cancer, and cancer, maybe destroyed like the first career you had or something, or you're going to be a bobsledder and you have cancer and now you can't do it because your legs got cut off. Like, are you going to make it? Are you just going to be the guy that lost his legs and couldn't bobsled anymore? Is that just going to be your shtick now? And especially like a 10-year-old that loses their parents. Are you just going to be the 10-year-old kid that you're stuck on that day? However many years ago at this point, like you're still kind of ruminating. It's the same thing over, and it's like, and I understand that it can be traumatic, or there's PTSD. There's lots of symptoms involved, and psychology of humans is difficult. But despite having a perfect excuse and never really nobody making you do anything anymore, I don't think it is constructive to search for and find excuses. So wherever possible, even if it is incredibly unlikely or unlucky events that again throw you off course or some way fuck up your life, why use that as an excuse to like go in the wrong direction, right? I think it almost should be I want to succeed or do accomplish some goal, again, however transient or whatever, in spite of these horrible things that happen. So I don't want to be the guy whose parents got run over by a car, right? I don't want to be the bobsledder that lost his legs and can't bobsled. Like I want to be. You can be more than that. You don't have to be just the sad loser that his parents are dead. It's like fine, but that could be your whole life. That could be everything. You could just be that guy forever, and that's how you live and that's how you die. But to me, I think that's a very defeatist and loser attitude. So to the extent possible, you know, throw the don't let the trauma define who you are, right? You can have trauma and you can even carry it with you to some extent as a chip on your shoulder, but don't let the chip become a fucking kettlebell, right? You don't be walking around with a backpack, and I know people have different degrees of trauma and it's hard to deal with. I'm sure, depending on what it is. But at the end of the day, I still think like I understand having grace for oneself, but not pity, right? Pity's not helpful. Right? I know it's a perfect excuse, but do you really want? Are you want an excuse? Is that what you're after? You just want an excuse so that, oh well, I would have been great, but my parents died, so yeah. It's like, all right, great, you're a loser now. It's the same as like the high school athlete. Well, I blew my knee out actually. That's why it wasn't. I was going to get drafted by the Steelers, but I hurt my knee. It's like playing basketball. It's like, okay, well, fine, but you didn't do it, right? I know you got hurt, but then you just gave up. So it's like if you really were good enough to play for the Steelers, why did you give up? It's like it's also fine to just be like, all right, well, I didn't want to do it, I gave up. But I think using that as like the excuse versus who you are. Just, well, yeah, I tried out and didn't work. That's fine. But I think I would have if X Y Z. It's like I think that's just a stupid a loser mentality. I'm not even sure what I'm doing in this world right now, but I'll lock in. I guess this is this is kind of a no duh thought. A lot of these are just no duh thoughts, but I think sometimes saying them out loud can lend themselves to there's something more there a lot of times. So if sometimes when I say something and then I'm like, oh, well, that, I guess that kind of answers itself. It's almost like a self-concluding sentence. Uh, it's because I think there might be something more, like more to wrestle with this idea, and either I don't hear it or I don't get into that that line of thinking, or there just really isn't that much more to go on to it. But either way, I still say these things just because I think there might be a chance that there's something in there, and saying it out loud is a chance for me to at least hear it being said, and then maybe I go, oh, okay, I actually have something for this, which isn't always the case, but this is one of those things that might not go anywhere, but I guess we'll see. Uh, the Western, like, because I've been also interested in looking at this dichotomy between Eastern and Western. I'll say like philosophy, but you could even put like religions into this category, where you have like Easterns might be more, Confucius, the Chinese, Indian, Buddhist, that kind of, those are religions, but just in general, like, I'll even say like philosophy. And I would put philosophy and religion in the same, in a similar boat. I would say philosophy, religion does create a philosophy for people, and philosophy itself is something that guides people, and is it's just, religion and philosophy are both guiders of wisdom, right? Philosophy and religion both kind of, philosophy is more maybe exploratory, or trying to dissect and understand, whereas religion's more prescription based, where it's like, here's what you should do to then be the just person, whereas philosophy is like, what is just person, what is justice? I don't know. Regardless, the Eastern philosophies in general are much, to my eyes, much more in tune with the immaterial world, like the spiritual world, the mind, the psyche, the spirit, all things that the pure materialist reductionist scientist would laugh at or call not real, or it's not measurable by my microscope cannot detect soul, so therefore it's not real. Which I think is a silly scientific argument anyway. It's like, well, we don't have any evidence for this. It's like, okay, great, fine, but at some point there wasn't evidence for anything we believe, but somebody still had to believe it, and then go through the painstaking process of collecting evidence, which sometimes was pretty surprising. So even like, I don't know, this is a new idea of mine. Is I'm gonna be thinking, and I've actually even thought about many of these throughout the years, and I've written some of them down in my one of my my many documents that I keep. But they're like potential experiments that I would run if I were like a hypothetical scientist with an infinite budget, and was just interested in like measuring or even confirming measurements of said phenomena. Because I feel like a lot of these paradigm shifts, whether it's Galileo and the what is it, the ethnocentric or the ethnocentric, whatever, the heliocentric, yeah, that's what it is, in the heliocentric solar system, whether it's like Newton and Einstein versus in the gravity and the physics debate, even the quantum mechanics, classical physics kind of debate, all these things. A lot of them, when each of their predecessors were uprooted, there was enormous scientific. This wasn't like some not some regular dude like, hey, I hate that. It was like actual PhD scientists, like the people that were thought to be the most brilliant in the world, being like, well, you're actually an idiot. It's like people were laughing at their theories, calling them idiots. I mean, Galileo was can got got murked, So like people were laughed at and judged for these ideas that we now again largely accept to be correct, and we can just kind of I'm not saying that you should always just assume history's on your side and do what you think, but I think doing what you think is best, or what your intuition tells you is good. But that being said, I think a lot of there are maybe experiments that could that may seem superfluous or unnecessary to run if you're like a practicing scientist that's funded by Disney or whatever. I'm not even sure if Disney's funding, so they probably are, uh, or I don't know, the FBI or something. But yeah, like funding those scientists, you're gonna like laugh at these like silly experiments and things that I would think to do. But I think, I don't know, I think you should leave yourself open to be surprised by results that you may or may not expect. There's also many much more, like, as much as we might think that science has answered all the big questions. And again, I'll say science is not a person. Hasn't really answered anything. It just collects evidence for things. We have a lot of evidence supporting things, but in each like new paradigm that comes about that replaces its old paradigm, if we think about it that way. So, for example, like Einstein's, theory of gravity, not gravity, but just his like theory of time and space, kind of replaced Newton's, right? But a lot of the same Newton's paradigm existed because its predictions were very accurate in a lot of ways. Now there obviously were predictions that it made that weren't right, but people didn't say the one wrong prediction and go, well, this whole system is stupid. Obviously, there were huge components of it that functioned well and worked, for all the stuff that we see like on our planet and everything like that. That all checks out, but there were things that weren't consistent with the theory. And even Newton himself was saying, well, it's not even that I really believe in this. He was kind of skeptical of his own ideas, but he's like, well, this is simply consistent with observation. So it's not even like I am some believer in this, because ideas still need someone to believe in, even if they're true or false. You still need people to believe it, or understanding is one thing, but belief is another. And belief kind of requires a certain level of understanding. I'm not going to believe in something I don't really understand. I guess I think you kind of could. It's a larger argument with believing in something you don't understand. I think you do need to, but that's not what I'm talking about now. But regardless, you still had to replace, again, a mostly correct Newtonian view with the Einsteinian view, which again, in retrospect by history, is all like, well, I would have been like, everyone thinks that they would have been on the side of whoever's right, like the victors. Like, well, I would not have been on the Nazi team. It's like, well, maybe I don't know, maybe you were. If you've canceled someone, you probably would have been a Nazi and not not one of the persecuted. Anyway, I'll it's perfect timing because I just got on Nazis. I'll end the episode there. So thanks for watching. Peace out. I'll see you in the next one.